welcome everyone. I'm going to be moderating from the top, App Growth Strategies for 2024 and beyond. My name is David Brown. I'm the founder of Grohaus. We're a lifecycle marketing consultancy that supports apps with growth through email marketing, SMS, and push notifications. I am joined today by this lovely group of world-class marketers who's going to be giving us some juicy insights on marketing that we can brew on and take home with us. Also, I want to make sure, please send any questions through Slido. I want to make this really interactive for the last session of the day. So let's start with some introductions. Let's start with Alon. Where are you based? Where did you grow up? And please share an overview of your app for the audience members that haven't heard of it.
Sure. So again, I'm Alon. I'm based in Boston. I grew up in South Brooklyn, so Coney Island, Marine Park area. For anyone who takes the Q or the B, I feel you. And I currently work at Hornet, which is shockingly the second largest gay dating app in the world. And I bet most of you have never heard of it. And that is on purpose, and we can get into why in a little bit.
Okay.
Mysterious.
Mm-hmm. Keeping you on your toes.
Yeah. My name is Kate Palmer. I live in New York City for the last 11, 12 years. I'm originally from New Jersey, and I work at TouchTunes, which is the jukebox company for anybody who's not familiar. You know, if you go to a dive bar or a Buffalo Wild Wings and there's that jukebox up on the wall, that's us. And I have thousands of credits for everybody here, so come find me during
awesome.
free drinks through the free credits through the end of August. So
check under your chairs, everyone. No, I'm just kidding.
I wanted to be like Oprah up here, but I left it in my purse. So
You get a car. You get a car.
Yeah.
I'm McLellan. I'm based here in New York. I grew up, oddly enough, in the south of France, as you can tell by my extremely strong French accent. But if you move here early enough, or when you're young enough, you lose it. I work for BigBrain Games. We're a skill-based gaming startup where you can wager real money against other players in a lot of skill-based games that are brain-based. So trivia, Wordle, that kind of word games, that kind of stuff.
Awesome. So here's a quick icebreaker to get us going. What's one thing you see some apps do that really gives you the ick or just really crawls under your skin? I can kick it off. Just give you time. So a pet peeve that I have is when an app sends me a notification for something I'm already aware of. So like this morning, I got a notification at 5 a.m. from LinkedIn about a DM that I already read and responded to from the day before. So I think two things here. Push notifications at 5 a.m., no bueno, no bueno. And then also, I already saw this, so thanks for the non-use.
I have one. I will say when apps send you notifications that you haven't been using it and they do it in a really judgy way. MyFitnessPal, does anybody work there? Okay, because I feel like I periodically get back into that app, and actually a lot of the fitness apps do this, but like I periodically get back into it and I'm logging everything consistently for like a week, and then all of a sudden I start getting these messages. It's like, you haven't logged anything for a while, you must not be serious about your goals, or like and I understand like that works, but then it just makes me feel bad about it. I don't like that. I don't like that.
It's interesting you say that because I used to work at Lose It, which is MyFitnessPal's biggest competitor, and we specifically tried to not do that with our So that's really interesting to hear.
Yeah, that really annoys me.
Yeah, I would say mine is when you start two things. When you get into an app for the first time and it's like, start a trial, start this, and I haven't even like gotten into the product yet. I think it's because I'm a marketer and I know what they're doing and it just drives me nuts. I'm just like, stop. I also really, really hate when people shitify their apps, which means like I've been using it and now suddenly a feature I was using that was free is now paid and I can't anymore, and I'm like, well, I'm not gonna use it anymore. I'm done, I'm good. It really pisses me off a lot, so.
I think for me, it's like when they're asking for too much upfront, like similar to when you're logging in, right? Like, will you rate us? Will you allow push? Will you allow app tracking? All that stuff, like, I haven't even seen the product yet. Right. So like, no to all of this because I don't know what I'm even agreeing to at this point. I think before that too, like when you're doing user acquisition, when you see an ad unit that doesn't actually use footage of the actual game that you're going to play. Right? I mean, I do a lot of gaming stuff. It'll be footage of some game that isn't even related to what you're actually downloading. You see it a lot from like some of the like smaller Chinese like gaming companies where they'll use like AAA gaming footage. So I worked at Take-Two briefly. There were some companies taking Take-Two game footage from like Grand Theft Auto 5 and making it seem like it was the app that you were going to download and play. And there's that kind of sort of bait and switch that seems to be pretty rampant at the moment that just drives me up the wall.
Yeah. Classic bait and switch. Also, Shitify.
Fortunately, it
I'm
works.
going to be using that a lot more.
It's actually not my term. It's from an article called Shitifying, like the user experience. You guys should read it. It's really interesting it's part of the user life cycle. Eventually, you get to Shitifying your product when you're just trying to squeeze money out of all of your users at that point.
Okay.
You should Google it. It's a good article.
Awesome. All right, so here's a two-part question. In 2024, how much weight are you seeing apps place on user acquisition versus engagement and retention to drive growth? And what should or should they not be doing when it comes to deciding how to balance that scale?
I think user acquisition is the lifeblood for most products. So like you're going to have that involved in the equation at some point. You can't just turn it off. But I think with all the changes that came from, Apple's definitely made some changes to this industry in the past few years, to say the least. And I think some of those really shifted the focus to like, how do we get retention as absolutely as high as we can? Because you don't have to go refine those users. Like re-engagement and reactivation are much, much harder to do with those new systems that Apple didn't put in place but took away. And so, it kind of shifted that. I guess some of the budget then shifts to those CRM tools and lifecycle, right? How do you get those to become a little bit more of a prime focus on things you're optimizing towards, rather than a lot of companies seem to check the box of like, we put it in place, and now we don't need to touch it anymore because it's self-optimizing or whatever, right? And now there's kind of that like, well, we need to have a CRM that's actually optimizing and actually taking a little bit like closer look at that, and what are we doing with coupons or reactivations, right? Our user list that we actually have control over.
I would say, like 5 years ago, DAU was king. I think it depends on your product, but I don't think that's the case anymore. So I would say user acquisition is not really something people talk about in the way they used to in 2024. It's sort of like, oh, we need to. I'm hearing words I used to not hear as much in the industry, like, EBITDA comes up a lot, profitability comes up a lot, LTV comes up more than it used to. LTV was like new and sexy a few years ago, and only some people really focus on that. So I think retention is the new focus. I still don't think that enough apps have cracked that code yet. Everyone's like you were just saying, let's do a good CRM, but I think that there's more that can be done, and I think that the weight is disproportionate. You can't just only focus on retention or only focus on UA, and there's like a pendulum, and we're going one way now, and then it's going to swing back because well, we need more users. We can't just get more out of the users we have, so it's going to swing back, and I think there needs to be a good mix of both, and I find that leadership in a lot of companies hyper focuses on one versus the other usually, and that's a huge problem.
Yeah, that is definitely true. And I mean, coming to these shows for the last 8, 9 years, whatever, it used to be very much like you would have people talking about user acquisition strategies, and then you would have another panel that was only talking about how do we retain these users, how do we get more engagement, and now the lines are much more blurred than they were previously. I think some companies, just from what I've seen in the apps on my phone, I think some companies are doing it a lot better than others at the moment. Mm-hmm. But a lot of times, from experience, I can tell you a lot of times it really does come down to leadership, and just what you said, that was perfect. They get hyper fixated on making sure oh, we need to get this many brand new users in this month. And it's like, okay, but we only want to pay this much for them. Okay, so you make that happen. And then 6 months down the road when 80% of those people have churned because you were paying so little for them, now they're like, well, how do we get them to stay on? And how do we get them back? And how do we get them to use the app? It's, it's very much
you're like, it's too late.
They're
gone.
It's too late, they're gone.
Yeah.
Because we bought crappy traffic, and now this is what happens.
Yeah.
It's kind of like life. It's a roller coaster, right?
Yeah.
Ebb and flows. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I mean, along the same lines of thinking about the budget and working with leadership, as you all know, making the most out of your marketing budget is crucial for your success. So at your company specifically, what's one way that you're optimizing the bottom of the funnel to increase ROI on your marketing spend?
Well, I mean, I can tell you, so I just started at TouchTunes, and they've never really focused on B2C before ever. They were primarily B2B, just getting the jukeboxes in venues. So coming in and seeing what is in place, I mean, this is going to be very bare bones, but step one is like you have to have the right tracking in place, and you have to make sure that you are covering all of the events in your app that prove that a user will be sticky. You know, you want to make sure that you are capturing all these different events, and you want to make sure that they are firing properly and consistently. That's very bare bones, but that's kind of where I am right now. It's just trying to get like the correct tracking in place so that you can have good measurement and can eventually feed the algorithms to optimize these campaigns.
I think for us, it's making sure, I mean, FTEs are kind of always things that always tricky, right? Like the first thing the person's going to see, and like, how do you optimize that for such a wide audience, and so you cover everybody's bases that are coming in. And having come from mobile gaming space, and we're like Zynga and Kabam, where we were very much like, the more data we actually did on it, the more we found that the shortest FTE possible, which is just to dump you in the game, was actually the most effective. But it's not really because we didn't teach you anything or because the FTE itself was faulty. It's just people want choice in what they're going to do with their next steps. And so we actually added that to BigBrain, where we have multiple games in the game within a single app. And so we give them a choice as to which one they want to play first, which is the one that they want to have the FTE based around. Is it trivia, or is it a bubble shooter? Is it, you know, our word games or called blocks? And that kind of gives them the ability to tell us exactly what they want to do in the app, and that gives us enough data to then start CRM, to start, you know, what is the first thing that we'll then put in front of them in the lobby, that kind of thing as well.
Yeah, especially the beginning is like, it's super hard to understand someone in the very beginning. So give them a full palette and then start optimizing from there.
Yeah, if anything, it's bringing what we were doing with user acquisition since the Apple changes, where like it's not as specific on IDFAs, right? We're hyper targeting smaller groups. It's a wider audience, and so you have to FTE kind of needs to kind of go with that sort of methodology.
We're doing something really different. We're going back to guerrilla marketing, and brand is a focus, which I'm seeing a lot in other apps too. I think back to like when only people advertised on TV, and that was in theory all brand marketing, because who could track that? It was all bullshit. I don't trust Nielsen. Sorry to anyone who's in the room. So we kind of are going back to that, to doing like, for us, it's community-based, it's gay dating, so we're going to local bars and we're putting stickers on the wall with QR codes. We're doing small little like parties that we're sponsoring that cost $1,000, and we're seeing lift from that stuff. So it's really about building that community and the brand in that way, as opposed to saying, I spent $5,000 on Google and I got 18 clicks and I got 6 users. It's like, we believe that if you're building it for a gay community within a certain region or area, word of mouth will do it for you if you're doing it right and partnering in the right ways. And organic is really the more focused. It's been a huge challenge, because it's the first company I've worked at that the main budget is no budget. And we still have to grow, and we just have to do it in really, really scrappy ways. Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, I will say right now I'm in the Stone Age, because I'm starting at the bottom. But like when I was at Stash, you just reminded me with the onboarding flow, Stash was an investing app, so we needed a lot of information from you up front. Our onboarding flow was very long and arduous, and even though we were constantly optimizing it and changing slides around and trying to condense it, we had a lot of people drop off, especially like halfway through is when we asked for your social security number, which we need in order to open your account, right? But a lot of people didn't get that, and especially if they're just seeing an ad on Facebook, they're like, why am I giving you my social security number without even seeing the app? So what I ended up doing to make sure that we were recouping all of those marketing dollars, I started what I called like the rescue mission, where basically, depending on where you dropped off in the onboarding funnel, because we got your email right off the bat, we would send you an email explaining why we needed that information and why you can trust us. And we are FDIC insured, all of this stuff. And we actually saw like very, very, very strong conversion to subscriber using that on top of like our everyday UA efforts.
Nice. Love that. Rescue mission.
Yeah, rescue mission.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this wouldn't be a panel in 2024 if I didn't ask a question about AI. So what are your thoughts on generative AI and how it will affect your app growth strategy in the second half of the year, if anything at all?
I'll start. I use AI to organize. I think it's a great starting point to just take all your thoughts and put it into a spreadsheet or present all your ideas or give you a jumping off point for your copy. So I don't have to think as much. I obviously don't let it do all the work, but I let it start the work for me, where I'll be like, I have like 15 ideas. I want to do something regarding like gay people in Latin America who love cats. Give me like 10 short, concise copy ideas for an Instagram ad. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is a great place to start. And then I go from there. Or our CEO asked me for X, Y, and Z. Give me like a template of what I should start with. And it starts to show me where I should be thinking or how I can think about retention in a way I might not have before. And then I take it from there and organize it. So I think if you're not using AI, it's a mistake, you have to. But I don't think it's gonna like take our jobs or anything the way people think. I think it's actually gonna make us do the work we want to do and less of the like operational shit that we have to deal with all the time.
Yeah, I agree. Essentially, I think AI is kind of like it's a pencil at this point. Like it's a tool for you to use. I think a lot of companies are overhyping AI to a degree, right? Where they do promise it's going to take your job, right? It's going to be great. It's going to do this kind of really playing it up for like the C teams, right? Of like you don't even need a marketing team anymore. But it's just, anybody who's actually tried to do that will realize really quickly it's actually terrible at doing that. And it's definitely one of those things where like you can actually speed up the more routine and boring parts of our job in a way that's effective without it actually going any further, right? It's not taking or risking my job.
Yeah, 100%. I'm still not fully sold on how a lot of like the big platforms are moving all their campaigns to like completely AI machine learning. Looking at you, Facebook, with the Advantage Plus campaign, because I like to be in control of things and I like, to be able to A/B test appropriately. However, I will say, now that I am like a team of one at TouchTunes and I'm testing, at this point I'm just throwing so much spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. So I'm like constantly spinning out new creatives, new copy, taglines, text one, text two. And I'm using AI for a lot of that. Nobody knows this, but we actually do have a darts business that we just acquired, and I've taken over the performance marketing for that. But the problem is like they were like a very small shop out in the suburbs of Chicago, and they didn't have any kind of imaging at all for these giant machines that people are buying and putting in their man caves. And so I've been using a lot of AI to actually just create lifestyle images where none existed before. And that's been really great to be very nimble and to be able to do a lot of this stuff myself and not have to, constantly bog down my creative team. I've also used it a lot for scripts for like UGC content, because I'm not a writer. I'm not a copywriter, but I've been able to get out a lot of script variants very quickly because of it.
Yeah. I will say this too with AI, AI can't feel. And I think as marketers, that's the thing that makes us special, is how your customer or consumer feels. And it misses that like human touch is really important. So that's what I try to always squeeze back into the copy if I am using it, because sometimes it can be really lifeless and dull.
Yeah, it makes a lot of assumptions, but I'm hearing some hacks on how to deal with your boss, some hacks on building images, right? So definitely like an assistant to help you do your job better. Yeah, cool. All right, I'm seeing a couple of questions come in. So the first one is for Sam. What's FTE?
It's first time experience. So when you first come into the app, the tutorial or whatever you see essentially when you're coming in on that funnel, basically logging in the first time, that's essentially what FTE is.
Awesome. Another question that just came in. The suspense is killing me. How is Hornet #2 and internationally or intentionally no one knows about it?
Yes. So in the US, no one knows about it, and that's intentional. So that's what I mean by that. We don't market here at all. So in the dating app space, someone was talking about this earlier about the idea of density of a product with users. So in the dating app space, if you're not #1 or #2, go home. That's our motto at Hornet. Like, don't even waste your time. So if you look at like Data AI or Sensor Tower, they're both now the same company, we're #8 in the US in terms of the amount of users we have on Hornet. We're not gonna win. We're never gonna win. Grindr owns the market, then there's Scruff, then there's so much competition that we don't wanna waste our money. So we focus on markets where we are #1, and that makes us #2 globally. And I think a lot of people who are growth marketers in the US think that the US is the world, and it's not. And a big part of our strategy is focused every single market that we're big in. We have like what we call the Glorious Seven. So it's markets like Turkey, Indonesia, Taiwan, Thailand, where we're #1 or #2. And we focus there, and there's a very different brand there than there is in the US, than there is in the whole world. So we have like our brand globally, and then we have how people interpret that in Thailand and how they interpret that in Taiwan or Indonesia. And also safety is a huge thing for gay people in those markets. Mm-hmm. So how do we, can we actually show guys on a grid in Ukraine where it's in our top 7 markets? Probably not. Ukraine's a war zone. People might get killed. So it's very interesting. So it's intentionally that no one knows about it here because we don't want them to, and we never will. Yeah. It's weird to not have US in your strategy. It's the first time I've ever had that, but it's very interesting.
I mean, I often feel the same. Being a New Yorker, we often feel like New York, everything's revolves around us. And then if you expand out, it's like the same thing with the US, right? So not to lose sight of the global market. But then also, I'm hearing there's like a deeper layer of providing access to something to someone in another country that we might take for granted here in the US.
Well, it's also reminding you that you can win in other markets if you invest in them and become globally really successful. We make a shit ton of money, and we have a massive user base, and we don't have to have a presence in the US to do that. So if you're starting out, you might not have to start in the US. If you don't have the funds, you should really look at what your product can solve in other markets as well and focus on those regions. I think that's a big takeaway I want to leave people with that sometimes is missed when you're talking to people in the US about their starting their apps or growing their apps. It's really important.
Great. Thanks, Alon. All right. What's the #1 piece of advice for growth?
I'm going to say, #1, you have to be nimble. You have to be able to just roll with the punches. You can't be precious about anything. I think most of us have been around long enough. What's here today is gone tomorrow, and you just have to be able to roll with it and adapt and keep going. The other biggest thing, which is much more practical, is you need to be self-sufficient when it comes to your data. I would say that's like a skill that everybody in this room should learn and hone and perfect. Be able to pull your own data, be able to manipulate or build your own dashboards, learn how to use SQL and Looker and Tableau and be able to build your own things. I've seen a lot of really good marketers get bogged down because they're waiting for a data science or a BI team to build out all these reports for them or to pull this or to analyze this. You can just move so much faster if you can just own the process from beginning to end. And it's something I've been thinking a lot about. I've seen a lot of it lately for just people getting bogged down. And if you can own all of that yourself, you never have to be reliant on another team.
I have a hack. Just copy what someone else is doing and do it better. I think so many people are so focused on building something new, and it's really cynical and cryptic, but it's probably not going to work. So there's so many ideas that are already out there and tested. You could just jump on the bandwagon and do it better, and let them lose the money and let them fail at growth, and you just copy them.
I have a word for that. It's called innovation.
No, I would agree with tried and true. It's tried and true for a reason. So yeah, definitely copying folks in the industry. I think it's also sometimes worth it to have that hard talk about the product, right? If you don't have a product that's feasible, or marketing can only, for lack of a better term, polish a turd so much, right? And so if it's just bad product, you're not really going to be able to grow it as much as you think you will, or as a lot of people think they can. And so it's oftentimes that conversation you have to have with your product team, or even the C-levels, right, around what is viable for that product.
Awesome. I think we're at time, so I'd like to thank our panelists, Alon, Karen, and Sam, for sharing some great insights.
Who's Karen?
I mean, sorry. Hey, I am so sorry.
She's like, I'm drunk. Yeah.
And good luck to anyone who entered the giveaway for the AirPods. I know I need them. I lost them somehow. They're in my house. But you ever tried to ping your AirPods and then they don't ring? I don't know if anybody has that issue, but it always happens to me. So, but yeah, enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.